So welcome back to Cozy Rosy Crochet. Today we are learning how to crochet a circular spiral granny square. It's actually a lot more different than it looks to our solid spiral granny square. That one has more defined corners, and when you compare them side by side, this one looks a lot more circular, believe it or not. At first glance they look quite similar, but they are worked differently in the way that the beginning is started of the pattern as well. So if you haven't already, make sure you've hit the subscribe button and of course the notification bell so that you never miss out on another one of my crochet tutorials again. If you've missed out on any of the other squares in the Hodgepodge blanket crochet along, you can find not only a playlist over in my channel, but you can find a link in the description box to see all the patterns that have already been featured, and the ones to come will be loaded shortly. You can also find a written pattern for this granny square over on my blog, which is linked in the description box too. Let's find out those materials that we need to work up this circular spiral granny square. So the materials that you're going to need for your circular spiral granny square are two different colours. You can do it in 4 if you want to, but because we've already done the other spiral, I'm going to work this one in 2 different colours, and they are quite contrasting because, well, why not? So I've got shade number 245, I think. And I've got my other shade of 250, my bubblegum pink, absolute favourite. And I'm using my PaintBox Yarns Simply Aran again. It's a size 4 yarn, so the same as a worsted or a light worsted. You're going to need a pair of scissors. You're going to need a corresponding hook size. I'm using my 5mm from Furls, my absolute fave, as you've probably established. And then you are going to need your 4 stitch markers again, because it's going to make life a little bit easier when it comes to knowing which colour you're working and securing them. The main thing for me is to keep those ends secured. So gather all of those materials and let's get started. So just like the spiral granny square, the solid one, we are going to work with 4 strands of yarn. So you've got my permission to work from both the middle and the outside of your ball, or of course you can grab another ball if you've got like some scrap of the same colour, because we're going to work 4 different colours or 4 different strands in the same round as we did with the last one. You're thinking, why are you showing me this technique again? It is actually different, and even when you look at the photos, but when they're next to each other, they are incredibly different. So the solid spiral granny square, I'll link here for you, does have actual corners, whereas this one is circular, so it does not have any corners in it. So it is different, I promise. But yeah, you're going to need 4 strands. So one is, so for instance, my shade number 250 is going to be colour A and colour C, and my 245 is going to be colour B and colour D. So you're going to need to work from both ends of the ball, or have 2 balls of the same colour available for both of them. And of course I'm going to share with you my little tip on to stop those various strands getting tangled as you work them. So this is worked in the round, so we're going to start by making our slip knot and creating our ring. Again, you can work a magic circle or adjustable ring if you want to. I always discourage that when you're working in granny squares because there is a risk of it coming undone, just to the way that blankets are used. So we're going to start by making a chain of 4 once we've got our slip knot onto our hook. That's 2, 3 and 4, and then we're going to slip stitch into that first chain that we made and straight through the loop on our hook to create our ring. You're probably fairly familiar with this, and obviously we're working into the lower hole, not where we've just slip stitched. So from here we're going to work our chain 1. This does not count as a stitch, this chain 1, so you can ignore that, and we're going to work into the middle of that ring. Going to insert our hook straight into the middle. I am going to work over this end as well, so we're going to work 1 single crochet, working back into that middle of the ring. We're going to yarn over and work a US half double crochet, so we bring up that loop, got 3 loops on our hook, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. We're then going to yarn over again and work 2 double crochets into the center. So once we've brought that loop up and we've got those 3, we yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops, yarn over, pull through the last 2 loops, and we do that for a second time. So we yarn over, insert into the middle of that ring, yarn over, bring our loop up, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. we're going to place a marker in the loop that's on our hook just to secure, and I'm going to make sure it's at the right end of my stitch marker and just pull tightly to secure that, and it just stops it coming undone. That's my biggest fear. You can just pull up and bring a loop up if you want to, but I like to keep mine secure because I've got the habit of pulling on something and it all coming undone. So once you've fastened off, or once you've secured that loop, should I say, don't fasten off, we're going to reinsert our hook and add in our next colour, which for me is shade number 245. So I'm just going to plop that over my hook with the tail yarn at the back of my hook and just bring it through. I'm going to try and get closer to those stitches I've just worked, pinching it to secure it so I can pick up, get all my ends facing the same way because I want to continue to work over those. And I'm just going to hold it all securely while I make my chain 1 to secure. And then we're going to repeat those stitches again, but in this colour. So we insert our hook, I'm working over my tails as well. Yarn over, bring your loop up to work your single crochet. We're going to yarn over and work our half double crochet all back into that same central ring. And then we work 2 double crochets into the centre as well. That's number 1 and that's number 2. So now we have 2 very similar looking sections, and I'm moving them around as I go because we want to have a lot of room to work all these stitches. I'm just kind of pinching all of this together and pushing my stitches around, which is why it's important we work that first chain 1 as close to those other stitches. I'm going to secure that loop that's on my hook with my stitch marker, and then we're going to pick up our second strand of pink. And just like we added in this second colour here, we're going to repeat the process. So once I've got my yarn, I'm going to insert my hook, put the loop over my hook with the tail at the back of my hook. I did that the wrong way around, there we go. Just bring it through the centre of the ring to bring it up. Pick up my working yarn to work my chain 1, and I'm getting that chain 1 as close as I can to those last stitches we worked. And then we've now got 3 tails to work over. I'm keeping all my working yarn to this side away from my tails because I don't want to work over those. And we're going to work that same stitch again. So we work into the centre of the ring, working 1 single crochet, followed by a half double crochet, running out of space, just move your stitches around. It's not quite as easy as it looks. There we go. Gives you a bit more space to work into. And then we're going to finish off with those 2 double crochets. There's the second one. And then you can secure that with another stitch marker. And then we just need to add our final colour on. So again, I'm moving that working yarn out of the way, so they're all together over there. And then we're going to join our 4th colour, which is the same colour as colour B. I know this looks really messy, but I promise you I'm being as neat as I can be, just showing the reality of sometimes of what happens with our crochet. So I've got my tails there, and I'm going to insert my hook back into the centre of that ring, yarning over the hook, just dropping it over with the tail at the back, bring my loop through and ready just to work my chain 1 to secure. I'm going to bring that back through because I don't want to make that chain 1 anywhere near that big. Okay, so we've got only a little bit of space left to work because we're working so many stitches into this chain loop here. So I'm just going to work my chain 1 around all 4 ends if I can. A lot to hold on to, just so I can kind of let go of that chain 1 space. Chain 1 we've already worked. That's my working yarn, so that can stay over there. And I'm just going to move these all around. So I'm grabbing the first clump of stitches that we made. There we go. And it just pushes them all down to give us a little bit more room to work. If you need to, you can make your starting ring larger, but it just means that you're going to struggle to close at the end of that. So once you've got a little bit more space to work, we work those stitches again. So we yarn over and work our half double crochet, and then we're working 2 double crochets all into that center. So that's 1 and 2. Again, I'm going to plop my stitch marker back into place, and then we have the completed round 1. I put my hand like that, you can't see any of the ends, it looks a little bit neater. So this is round 1 completed, and we've got 1, 2, 3 and 4 all ready to go. Now, just like we did with our spiral solid granny, we're going to move back to the first colour that we did. You can use a different colour stitch marker if that will help you identify the first one, and just pull up that loop ready to get working. And we're going to start by working into that first single crochet that we made in the second colour. So we work across the top of the previous colour, and every single start to the round always starts the same and it always finishes the same. So let's work the start of this one together. We're looking for the top of that single crochet. So we've got 1, 2, 3. That was the first stitch that we made, so it was number 4. So we're just going to yarn over, and we're going to insert our hook underneath that first single crochet, ready to work 2 double crochets into the top of that stitch. Now I'm going to grab another stitch marker because I want to mark that first stitch of the round, and you'll see why when we come back to it. You don't have to, but I would recommend it. We're then going to work 1 double crochet into the next stitch, and then to end this section, as we do with all of these sections, we finish working 2 double crochets into that next stitch, or the last stitch to be worked. So that's 1 and 2. So this stitch that's marked, we're not going to work into. We're just going to leave that as it is because we're going to pick it up in a moment. So we just pop our stitch marker back in place and secure. So we can see the start of the round here with this different coloured marker in my square, and then we've secured that loop. We're ready to move around and pick up the next colour. And we're going to repeat this for each of the colours around. So we find the top of that single crochet. 1, 2, 3, there it is. So we're going to work 2 double crochets into the top of that first stitch that we made. So work 2 double crochets into the same. We're then going to work 1 double crochet into the next stitch, and then we finish the section working 2 double crochets into the next. 1 and 2. We leave that marked loop or stitch unworked, so I'm just going to secure this loop here, and then we're ready to turn and work the next one. So I'm just going to bring a loop up. So once I've popped that onto my hook, we're ready to work across the next section. So we find that single crochet to work into that first stitch that we made. We yarn over and we're placing those 2 double crochets into that first stitch. So that's 1, and then back into the same stitch, we're working another double crochet. We work 1 double crochet into the next stitch, and then into this next stitch along, or the last stitch we're going to work, we work a further 2 double crochets. So I can secure that loop with my stitch marker. As you can see how fumbly I am, that's why I always mark them. And then we're ready to pick up our final colour or final loop. I can tell it's my final one because there's the start of our row, or round as the case may be. So we're just going to work, make sure those ends are on the right side, there we go, by working our final group of stitches. So working to the top of that single crochet, working 2 double crochets, we work 1 double crochet into the next, and we work 2 double crochets into the next stitch. Just like all the other rounds in these colours, we've left that last stitch, so we're going to leave that one again. So I'm just going to secure that stitch or that loop, so you can have a look at what it should look like. So at the end of round 2, you should have these kind of weird diamond looking things. You should have that unworked stitch left from each group. You can't see them anymore, but just to show you what it looks like. So I'm going to remove this stitch marker because we don't need it. It was just to show us where we're working up to. What you can see is that we've got 2 pairs of double crochets. We work into the first one, skip the next one, and that one is actually the first stitch that we made in round 2, just in case you're interested. So I'm going to bring up that loop so we can go straight into round 3 in our first colour. And this is where you're really going to see this pattern established for us to grow this spiral. So just like we did before, we're going to work into that first stitch, and we're going to work 2 double crochets. I am going to mark that first stitch again just so we can see as we get round where it ends up. We're then going to work 1 double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. Oh no, next 3 stitches, sorry. So last round we did 1, because then we're back to this final stitch before our marker, and in this stitch once again we're going to work 2 double crochets. So if we stop a moment and see what we've done for this section, in our first stitch that we worked into, we worked 2 double crochets, and then we worked all the way across to the stitch before the stitch marker, working 1, 2, 3 double crochets, 1 into each of the next 3 stitches, and then we finished with a double crochet into that stitch just before the marked stitch. And we're going to repeat this for all the colours around. And to continue to increase the size of your spiral, you just keep repeating that pattern, and the number of stitches between your first stitch and the last stitch will just increase by 2 in each round. So let's work the next colour together. So I'm just picking up that loop. So we're going to work 2 double crochets into the top of that first stitch. I'm going to work 1 double crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. Or you can think of it as the stitch before your stitch marker, and then into that final stitch before your marker you work a further 2 double crochets. So continue to repeat that on the next 2 colours, and I'll meet you back to where our first stitch is. So we're going to leave this stitch here unworked, you'll see as you work along. So remember to work those 3 in between the start and the finish increases here. Work that for the next 2 colours, and I'll meet you back at the start of our round. So I'm just working my last 2 double crochet, and you can see that we have 1 stitch unworked just before that first stitch that we made, and that is absolutely correct. So if you're in the same position, you're doing the right thing, and you can see already that it almost looks like it's squaring off, but actually we're getting the perfect spiral. If I tighten my tails, giving them a gentle pull, got to pull the right one, there we go, it creates more of the spiral look. So we're going to secure this loop, and then we're ready for round 3. So you can see that we've got this first stitch here. I'm going to remove that stitch marker and move around, make sure I've done my flip, and then I am ready to bring up my loop to start round 3. So just like we did for the previous round, we're going to start by working 2 double crochets into that first stitch, 1 and 2. I'm going to mark that first stitch again just so I can make sure that we're in the right place. And this time we've got 5 stitches to work 1 double crochet into before we reach the stitch before the marker. So that's 2, 3, that's my dog, apologies, she does snore a lot, 4 and 5, and then we are going to work 2 double crochets into that stitch just before the stitch marker. That's 1 and 2. So last row we had 3 stitches in between, and again it's increased by 2 stitches, so we have 5 stitches in between those stitch markers this time. So we're going to repeat this for all the colours around. So bring up our loop, work 2 double crochets into that first stitch, one and 2. We're going to work along the next 5 double crochets, working 1 double crochet into each, which will take us to the stitch before our stitch marker where we work those final 2 double crochets. That's number 5. We've got 1 stitch remaining before the marked stitch, so we're going to work 2 double crochets into that final stitch. So you can repeat that for the next 2, I'm trying to ignore this lump here, there we go. You can repeat that for the next 2 colours, and then we'll be ready, we're back to the stitch, 1 skip stitch before our start of the round. So continue to work that around, and I'll meet you at the end of round 4. So I've reached back to 2 stitches before my stitch marker, so I need to work my double crochet, 2 double crochets into that last stitch, and that's the end of that round. I always want to work that skipped stitch, but we are skipping it, so make sure you don't work it because it will throw your stitch counts off. Try and flatten this out a little bit. So as you can see, at the end of round 4, we're really starting to see that spiral pattern. It's not quite squared off, don't worry, it's going to spiral more as we keep going around. So we're going to move directly into round 5. So again, I'm starting just by moving my starting stitch marker and picking up this loop. Like we've done with all the other rounds, we're going to start by working 2 double crochets into that first stitch, and then I'm going to mark the first stitch that I made just so I know where I am, and I just have the red arrows going over. Oh my god, sugar, you can't see them. Oh, that's so annoying. I didn't know they were coming. So in case you're not aware, I'm going to leave that in. I know it's a mess, but that was the red arrows. They are incredibly famous and they've just flown past my window. Wow. Okay, moving on. So we've marked that first stitch of the round. I didn't do a flip. Let me just flip that. Oh my goodness, that's so distracting. So we've marked that first stitch, and there is our second one that we've made, and as you can see the space is increasing and continuing to increase between the start of our row or part of this round to that stitch marker. So this is how the square is going to continue to repeat. So you can count your rounds very easily because we're going into round 5. So we've got this section here that starts as round 1, and you've got round 2, 3 and 4. So as long as you know that that's the start of round 1, then count from here. So round 2, 3 and 4, we're going into round 5. So for round 5, we've worked those first 2 double crochets, and there's our first marked stitch. And for round 5, we're going to work 7 double crochets between this first increase and the last increase. tell I'm still in shock by seeing those beautiful aeroplanes. They make me cry a lot, actually. I don't know why. Really aeroplanes. They didn't have any stuff coming out of the back of them. So I'm so distracted, sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. That takes us to the stitch before, well, marked stitch where we work another double crochet, another 2 double crochets. So we increase is what I mean. And we're going to repeat that for all 4 colours, and that will bring us back round. So you're going to repeat this stitch pattern continually for a total of 8 rounds in total. So we're already on row 5. So when you get to the end of this, I keep calling them rows, they're rounds, the end of round 5. So you've got to go do round 6, where there's going to be 9 double crochets between these stitches. And then round 7, there'll be 11. Round 8 is going to have 13. So once you've reached round 8, I'm going to come back and work the final round with you, which is round 9, where we're going to square off our square effectively. So work round 5, where you're working 7 double crochets in between. Round 6 has 9, round 7 has 11, and then round 8 has 13. And I'll meet you back for round 9, which will be our final round. So I've just worked my final part of round 8. So I'm back to my skip stitch before my stitch marker. I'm going to take that, well, actually no, yeah, I'm going to take that out, because for round 9, this is an incredibly short round, if you can call it a round at all, because we're going to leave a vast majority of these stitches unworked. So I'm just picking up the loop from my first colour again. Please ignore this, I had a bit of a mishap with a large clump of yarn falling out. I promise you I was neat up until this point. Loop, and we're going to do round 9. So this is the same for each colour. So we're going to work 1 double crochet into that next stitch, and then we're going to work a corner effectively. And for that we're going to place 2 treble crochets, US treble crochets, a chain 1 and 2 US treble crochets. So we yarn over the hook twice, insert our hook into the next stitch, yarn over, bring a loop up. So we've got 4 loops on our hook. We're going to yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2. We're going to do that again. So we yarn over the hook twice, yarn over, bring our 4th loop up, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. We then work a chain 1 for our corner, and we're going to yarn over the hook twice again and work back into that same stitch, working a further 2 treble crochets. So we wrap that yarn twice, so we have 4 loops on our hook. We're then going to come back down to decrease the size to create a flat surface. So we yarn over the hook and work 1 double crochet into the next stitch. I'm going to work a half double crochet into the next, and then we finish with a single crochet. And that creates a corner, because I don't know about you, but right now it's not looking very square. Mine's actually quite curly, but that's also fine, because we're going to fix this with these corners. So I'm just going to mark that stitch for now, but that is that section done. We're leaving all of these remaining stitches unworked, and we're going to jump over to the next marked stitch and repeat that corner again. So we start by working 1 double crochet into the next stitch. Then we're going to wrap the yarn around the hook twice, nice and tightly, and we're going to work a US treble crochet, a second US treble crochet. We're going to chain 1 and work a further 2 treble crochets into the same stitch, and then we come back down along the side, working 1 double crochet into the next stitch, followed by a half double crochet, followed by a single crochet. And again we can mark that stitch, and then I have to faff about with this to try and get it to untangle itself without having to untangle. There we go, that's a bit better. So you can see that it makes our edge actually straight. So we have 2 corners already. So we've worked this one, we're going to work the next one, doing the same thing again. So we start with a double crochet into the next stitch, and then we wrap that yarn around the hook twice to work those 2 treble crochets, US trebles obviously, a chain 1 and a further 2 US treble crochets. We're then going to work 1 double crochet into the next stitch, followed by a half double crochet into the next, and a single crochet into the next one. Might have reached the point beyond being okay to be tangled here, so that's definitely why I keep my stitch markers here, because it could easily undo the work. So there we have another corner worked. So we've got 3 corners, 1 left to do. Am I going to get away with this tangle? I think I might just be able to. So let's work this final corner together. So we yarn over the hook and work 1 double crochet into the next stitch. I nearly forgot to do that one. We're then going to work 2 treble crochets. That's 1 and 2, followed by a chain 1 for our corner, and a further 2 treble crochets all into that same stitch. We're then going to work 1 double crochet, Fiona, followed by a half double crochet, and our final stitch is going to be a single crochet. I'm just going to mark that stitch one last time. I'm so worried about these knots, pulling these out. So just so you're not worried, that's mine at the moment. Please don't worry, because all we need to do, get that end out of the way so it's not so tangled. It's going to need a little light blocking, but there we have our completed spiral granny square. If you compare this to your solid spiral granny square, this circular one looks much more circular than it does when it appears on its own. This doesn't look much of a spiral, although you can twiddle it. But yes, I'm super proud of this design. I think it's really, really smart. And I really hope that you've enjoyed making your very own. All you need to do now is just to fasten off your ends, which I'm very happy to do because of these tangles. I'm just going to basically snip there. There we are. Get rid of that mess. No one knows it's there. And then you're ready just to weave those final ends in. With your ends on the back here, we're going to do our normal trick of, if you've worked over all 4 of them, there's just one that will pull, that will bring your circle closed. Just take your time and pull all of them individually, and you'll find the one that is the starting that you all worked around, and it will just bring in the center of your square. And there we have our completed spiral, our circular spiral granny square. So I'm going to be back with you tomorrow with another granny square pattern as part of the Hodgepodge blanket crochet along. If you've enjoyed this tutorial, please do give it a thumbs up. Feel free to share it with your friends, and I will see you again tomorrow for another granny square tutorial.